So we've established that these three colors and these three types of relationships don't naturally get along with each other.
Yes.
But if you pull back again, what we realize is they need each other.
Yes, because what I see today mainly is the conflict of the world is between only two of them. Yeah, I think the pioneers are kind of out to lunch, being one. But I see, it's the nurturers, the NGOs, whatever, yelling at the winners, and the winners yelling at the nurturers, and there's no compromise, and therefore there's no way out.
Well, they're trying to win relative to their values, or they're trying to convert, as opposed to compromise. Is not the right word. Complement would be the right word. They do complement each other. There is a sense underneath this that they conflict, but the reality is that they complement. And if you pull back to what the purpose is of these three core relationships in society, nurturing, getting people to engage in the community, being able to create healthy communities and get engagement from individuals and communities within greater society. You need people to be productive.
Yes.
And you need a place to live, that you can belong to.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. The market, the providers are about generating wealth. So if we positively generate wealth, we can do more of
real wealth, true wealth,
true wealth. And this is, money is a function of this, but it's also the things that we can use to do that.
Like shelter and food, and
clothing, and
whatever.
All the way to anything you need to nurture. You're not going to sit out there's the basic stuff, but you can actually get it. So we provide some pretty high tech things that help us nurture better.
Yes. Yes.
And then we know we have to renew. Every one of these areas has to renew. So at one level, none of these can do it by themselves. Nurturers by their own selves are not able to provide, and they're not able to renew by themselves. The providers are, there's nobody to work at the jobs. There's nobody to do the work if we don't have engaged citizens.
Yes. And
we're not going anywhere if we don't get new ideas, even from a commercial standpoint. So we need the ideas to come back, even if I'm only interested in the commercial ones. And the idea people, they really don't. They are in essence at the idea phase, and it doesn't become real until it can get into the other areas.
Yes.
That's where it hits the ground. That's where it does become tangible. The intangible switches over to a tangible reality, and you can see, touch, feel it. It affects people in a day-to-day life as opposed to a theoretical life.
Yes.
So we got this problem, and the only way that we're going to be able to get these areas to connect is to add a fourth part. And that fourth part is the nucleus of these three. So if you can imagine the three circles, with the top being the blue circle, the bottom left being the green circle, and the bottom right being the red circle, then you need something in the middle of that to balance these circles out. If we go back to the beginning of our conversation and say, there's probably, if we're going to map values in culture, there's probably a natural
ideal,
a natural balance or harmony of these values to align in a point where a society has the right amount of nurturing, wealth development, and ideas to emerge, to grow in a true way,
in a healthy way.
And we'll talk about a theory of what that might be, but how does that? It's not going to happen by itself.
Right.
It needs, because there's going to be conflict.
Because even in nature, there is they have governing systems in cells, and they have governing systems in DNA. There is a component in nature that regulates the system to the range that is best.
Exactly. And so there needs to be this governing system in the middle. And they, in essence, create the overall culture that is going to provide emphasis to one or the other. And that's, in our world, we call that democracy. They call it different. There's other ways of doing this. But the basic thought places in our world, whether this is the right way or not doing it, say you need three levels of that. We need elected representatives, we need law, and we need free speech. That somehow is going to, the law is going to tell right versus wrong, or the legislative component is the rules, the law is enforcing them, and the free speech is actually questioning them and seeing if we're going about that stuff. So we've got this legislation and all these things. That's how we look at it, but that's not the only way you could. question the balance now, and maybe that's not working so well, because the laws that we're putting in place now, probably based on the amount of stress we have, don't have the ideal balance between these three areas.
Yeah.
But that's at the greatest level. You can look at this at smaller organizations, where each organization, even if they're red, has to have some sort of balance of these three. And there needs to be a governing function with that, whether it's board directors, whether it's
or even there's a leadership type of thing in that if we go to a family, parents in a family set the governing structure, right or wrong, good or bad, for that family. And it's their relationship and their values as they come together that that do this. Is that, I mean, from an organizational point of view, historically we have a CEO, a heroic leader, and he or she does all these things. But at the moment, from a largely directive point of view, not seeing any of the things, by the way, that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, leadership is going to be really important, and we'll talk about individual organizations in terms of where they fit within this greater world. But I think the opportunity is to align your organization to its role within society. And leadership has to be able to understand
what that might
emulate what that role is, and there is a set of values that will support that role. That's objective. And if you're going to be in a nurturing organization, we know we got to create a safe environment. So there's values that will create that safe environment to be successful. We don't get to pick them. They're there. If we're going to be successful, we get to pick the role that we want to be, but we don't get to pick the values. And what you find, the organizations you'll find will be the most successful are the ones that the leaders, not all the people, but the leaders themselves are aligned to that role's values.
So the leaders have to live it and emulate it and kind of have it shine from their every word and every deed, rather than have a list of made-up values which we say are our values, but we actually behave differently.
Well, for sure. And it's kind of funny if you actually look at all these visioning and value exercises that are going through most organizations right now. I bet you if you were to put the bulk of them up on the wall, they're all the same. Because what they talk about, as opposed to talking about the role that they want to have in society. It's like, what values do we want to have? And they cherry pick them out, and usually they cherry pick the ones that everyone wants to aspire to, pretty foundational ones. Let's all be honest. Let's all
have integrity.
Let's all be accountable.
Customer service.
It's like all the same, and that's not organizational values. Those are just becoming
slogans.
Slogans, and a lot of times they'll pick values out that conflict with each other. Not knowing, they want to be all things to all people, and not understanding that you have to, go through these series of gates of values that are objective to form the color that you truly are. If you're blue,
so your first step in this, before you go to any mechanism, is to decide what's the best values to lead from for your organization, depending on its role in society.
The first thing is, if we're talking about trying to form a pattern of intangibles, what we're suggesting is that there is a pattern. It's based on these three core relationships. There's a governing factor in the middle. So we've got a circle we've got an area of circle, if we want to call it that, of blue organizations. We've got a circle of red and a circle of green, and we've got for the pioneering, the providing, and the nurturing areas. So my first question, if I'm going to actually, how do I use this, is where do I live on this map? What function do I have? If I know that there's a role here that no matter where I put my finger on this map, it's needed. It's not judgmental. The only thing you have to ask yourself is, okay, once I establish what is needed and where I am, now I've got to be true to this.
Now I've got to keep to the course that the map tells me.
That I'm on. I don't. Every one of these spots is just as valuable as the other, as long as we've got all of them.
So in our next chapter, what we might do is let's play with a few things we all know about and map them out, so we can just be a bit more concrete and see how this works.
Sure.